Hey guys, in today's video, I'm going to be teaching you how to, or at least giving you suggestions on how to earn more as a designer and a developer. There are going to be 5 things we're going to be covering today, and we're going to be covering these roughly, not necessarily going into depth of them. So the first thing is to stop using cheap freelancing platforms. The second thing is having a great portfolio and a great website. The third thing, learning how to market yourself. The fourth thing is learning how to negotiate. And the fifth thing is hourly, fixed, and value-based pricing. So coming to the first one, which is to stop using cheap freelancing platforms. And when I say cheap freelancing platforms, I'm usually talking about Fiverr and platforms like that. I personally have been a freelancer at Upwork, and I'm going to honestly tell you that it's good for some of the fixed price project work on the side, but it doesn't really allow you to earn a lot. Most of the major earnings that I've had on Upwork have been due to long-term contracts. And that's one thing that I don't like about Fiverr is its inability to support long-term contracts. And I'm mentioning this based on my conception of Fiverr. Like perhaps they've introduced longitudinal jobs as well, and allow you to work on larger projects. But if you're working on really small projects, then the scope or the potential of profit is sometimes also very limited, especially if you're working as a single person team. So what would I suggest if you stop using, let's say, platforms like Fiverr or Upwork or so on and so forth? I would actually suggest if you're in a developing country, you can obviously, if you're getting started, it's perfectly fine to actually go on Fiverr, on Upwork, even in your local market to search for a job just to get that experience. But once you have that experience and you just want to earn more, the first thing I would suggest is to actually apply for a remote opportunity or a remote job, because then you may be hired on a much higher rate than, for example, let's say on an on-project basis or an hourly basis. So that's really important. Once you have some experience, try looking for a job that's in a much better locality and it's remote. So that way, obviously, you would be paid in comparison to some of the other people who are earning a lot more in that region. And obviously that's going to be a bit hard. So you would have to obviously search for that, and you would have to do a lot of other efforts in order to be successful on that front, which is obviously something that I would be covering in some of the other steps. And we can obviously cover that particular item in a separate video as well. So you can also go on Upwork. So you can go on platforms like TopTal or Upwork, where there is potential of you finding long-term opportunities, but avoid going to platforms where the opportunities are very short-term and the engagements are very short, because usually, based on my experience, they don't lead to a large amount of profit or a lot of earning potential. Even if you get, let's say, small projects, the intermittent stage in between them is gonna actually make those profits not really that profitable if you're actually looking at your revenue over the year. So that's again step one. Step two is having a great portfolio and a great website. So I've seen a lot of people, and I've I've been asked by a lot of people that they don't really get like a lot of high paying content. They've done a lot of jobs on Fiverr, they've done a lot of jobs on, let's say, some of the other platforms. But the thing is that it's not necessarily about doing or having a large amount of contracts or a large amount of jobs. It's more about having quality content. So if I just show you my portfolio personally, so here's my website, and you can see I have some clients here, I have some recent explorations, and my portfolio pieces particularly just contain, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items, and then obviously the recent explorations are just links to Dribble. So if I actually go to one particular case study, so this is a project that I worked on recently, but as you can see, even though the project isn't necessarily that big, but I have actually prepared a really large case study for it. I've explained my roles and responsibilities. I've explained the process that I went through. I've explained, again, some of the styles that I've laid out, the typography, so on and so forth. And obviously it's a comprehensive sort of a thing, but basically this is what you need. You do not need something that's very superficial. What you need is you need to have a really great portfolio item. You don't need, let's say, tons or hundreds of items in your portfolio. You just need, let's say, 5 or 4 items that are great and have quality material in them. Again, the other thing that I would suggest is if you're a designer, let's say, go on Dribble, go on Behance, actually look at some of the top trending designers and see if your work compares to them. And if you don't compare to them, then obviously try to design at their level and get inspiration from them. One thing that I actually see a lot of like newbie designers do is that they use a lot of colors. The fonts that they're using aren't really that great. They're not necessarily in line with the modern standards. And then obviously some of the padding, spacings, they don't care about that. They just lay out the page. But these intricacies actually showcase the quality of work that you're doing. So it's really important to have a great portfolio and a great website which actually surfaces quality content rather than quantity. If you're just going to focus on quantity, obviously you're going to get clients that are going to be focused more on just getting that deliverable rather than getting that particular value or that high quality from your work. So that's step 2. Step 3 is learning how to market yourself. So obviously one part of this actually comes from your portfolio, but obviously even if you have a portfolio, that's not going to give you, or that's not going to allow you to market yourself. That's going to provide you tools which you can use to market yourself, but you still have to do something with them, right? So the first thing obviously, which we mentioned before, you need to have a great website, and the website shouldn't be buggy. It should be optimized and again, really easy to use. The navigational structure should be great. And then obviously, as I've mentioned before, you need to market yourself by case studies. You need to market yourself by, again, posting on social media. So especially on LinkedIn, let's say, you need to keep on updating some of the things that you're doing. So as an example, if I'm actually working on a design for a client, and if I have permission from him to actually display some of the progress that I'm doing, then what can I do to actually market myself? I can go on Behance, I can go on Dribbble, I can go on LinkedIn, and I can showcase my progress there. That way I can get not only inspiration from other people, but I can also be seen by a lot of individuals that previously did not even know me. Now, for example, let's say if someone from my, let's say, connections, or let's say from Dribbble or Behance or whatever platform that you're actually posting on, has a project in mind, perhaps if you're in their feed for quite a long time, you keep on recurring in their feed, they may actually approach you. But if you do not market yourself and you have gold, literal gold in your portfolio, it's not going to help you because people don't even know who you are and the work that you do. So that's really important as well. Step 4, learning how to negotiate. That is perhaps, I would say perhaps the most crucial stage or the most crucial skill. Once you actually secure a good client, if you don't know how to negotiate yourself, not only are you actually going to be cut off and you're not going to be paid well, you may even lose that client, because good clients and high quality clients, in my opinion, don't really care that much about money. What they care about is quality. And if they don't see you negotiating, if they don't see you providing quality content to them, if they don't see you being a great speaker and just having that ability to persuade them, to convince them, so on and so forth, then it's not going to work. This negotiation particularly is not just about actually securing a particular pay or a particular salary, right? It's also about explaining how your service is going to benefit them, explaining what value you're going to deliver to them. And that's really important. And with that particular point, with that point of value, I want to go to the 5th point, which is how do you actually work? Whether you should work on an hourly basis, whether you should work on a fixed price, or whether you should work on a value-based pricing. Well, if you're actually an experienced designer, then I would actually suggest you working on value-based pricing. Obviously, we can have a separate video on value-based pricing. The Future actually does a lot of great videos on value-based pricing as well, and I would recommend checking them out because I myself learn a lot from them as well. But value-based pricing basically says the value that I'm going to be delivering to you is actually going to determine my worth, right? So my current hourly rate or my previous job or anything along those lines is not going to determine my price or anything along those lines or my quote. Rather, it's the value I provide to you. So obviously that comes at a later stage. If you can actually start incorporating that in the early stages of your journey, then that's definitely great. And I would definitely recommend you doing that or trying to do that. But then if you're still not confident as to how to do that, you can check out some of the other videos. But if you still want to revert back to something, I would say going with a fixed price project. So the problem with hourly or working hourly is that imagine you keep on growing as an individual, you keep on learning new skills, and you keep on getting better and better and faster. Well, that basically means that even if you, for example, let's say we're working at $20 an hour or $10 an hour, for example, when you were starting out, and you were doing a task in let's say 4 hours, so you got 40 hours, or maybe you got that task done in 10 hours and you got $100. Now imagine that now you're really experienced and your rate is $100 per hour. You can do the same task in about 1 hour, but now you're still not earning a lot more. You're still earning the same amount. Sure, you're spending less time, and that may give you the opportunity to actually work on some other projects, but from a particular project, you're still earning the same amount. So how do you actually start providing more value to users and still charge more to users? You can't really do that with an hourly rate. What you need to do is you need to start charging at a fixed price, or charging contracts at a fixed price. So basically, for example, a website that you were previously doing at $100, you would now be doing that for, let's say, I don't know, $10,000, or maybe something along those lines, or let's say $5,000. Not only would you be doing that really quickly, but you would also obviously be getting a lot of profits from that. Now, before people actually jump on me and say, hey, we can't really expect that a person was previously doing a job in, let's say, 10 hours and now he can do it in 1 hour, so your example is wrong, so on and so forth. Well, that's not really the point. This is a hypothetical example. You have to note that I'm actually pushing the person from $10 per hour to $100 per hour. That in itself also doesn't happen, so it balances out. The point really is that imagine if there was a scenario where you can now do the same task in 1 hour and now your rate is $100 per hour. You would basically be earning the same amount, right? Even if, for example, you can do it in now, let's say, 2 hours, you can still be earning, let's say, $200 for that particular project. But anyone who actually knows a person who's working for, let's say, $100 per hour knows that they don't usually deliver websites for, let's say, $200 or $300, right? They charge a lot more. They probably charge like $2,000, $5,000, $10,000. And how do they charge that? Well, you basically give a fixed price quote on it. So you, in that sense, you wouldn't be restricted to actually sitting on your computer and making your earning justified. You can actually just spend the 5 hours or 6 hours or 2 hours, however much hours you want, and you can just do the work. You don't have to worry about sitting on the computer and charging a lot more, because if you're actually charging a lot more than what's needed for that job, that in itself would also be unethical, and it's just not productive, right? Why do you want to waste your time for something that you can just do really quickly? So that's really important. And then one thing great about fixed pricing is, especially if you're working on platforms like Upwork, so on and so forth, you can actually, again, with the permission of the client, just being very open about it, you can actually say that you're working with a team, and then you can obviously hire some other developers or designers that can work with you on that particular project, and you can outsource that project. And I don't want to say outsource in the sense of, let's say, giving work to, let's say, some other organization or anything along those lines. Actually give it to the people that you trust and monitor them. Ensure that the quality of work is something that if you were working on it, you would provide the same amount of quality. So that is something that you can do to actually take some of the burden off of you and hire some other people on that fixed price project as well. So those are some of the things that I think are going to be beneficial if you start working on and just pay heed to. And again, if there's anything else you would like to know, definitely let me know. But that's going to be it for this video. So do subscribe to hit the bell icon. If there's any of the step in this video that you would like me to highlight a bit more or talk about a bit more or do a separate video, definitely let me know and I can cover that as well. But other than that, I'll see you later. Take care.